Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking how a modern Boeing 777 passenger plane literally just vanished from the sky. It left behind what is easily one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in all of aviation history. I mean, think about it for a second. We live in an era where we are constantly connected, surrounded by satellites and incredibly advanced radar. And yet somehow, a massive commercial aircraft practically evaporated into thin air. More than a decade later, the whole world is still searching for the absolute truth.
But, before we get completely wrapped up in the technical details and the timeline, we absolutely have to pause and look at this staggering number, 239. That represents the 227 passengers and 12 crew members who disappeared. It's so crucial to remember that right at the heart of this incredibly complex mystery is a profound human tragedy. Families were just expecting their loved ones to arrive safely, and instead they were plunged into this absolute nightmare of unanswered questions that has literally dragged on for years.
Section 1. The impossible disappearance.
So let's set the scene. Our timeline kicks off on March 8, 2014. Flight MH370 takes off from Kuala Lumpur, heading straight for Beijing. Everything's totally normal, the crew is highly experienced, and less than an hour into the flight, the pilots make a completely routine, completely normal final call to air traffic control. But then, almost immediately after that, the aircraft just drops right off civilian radar. There was no emergency message, no distress call whatsoever. It was honestly as if someone just flipped a switch and the plane completely ceased to exist in the airspace.
Which leads us right into Section 2, a sudden change of course.
Now, at first, standard protocol naturally assumed the plane might have suffered some sort of catastrophic failure and just crashed somewhere along its planned route. Makes sense, right? But then military radar picked up a wildly different story. While civilian radar lost the plane heading northeast, the military systems actually detected an unidentified aircraft turning back over the Malaysian peninsula and traveling west. It was moving completely away from its planned route, and to make things even crazier, the transponder, the device that helps identify and track the plane, had completely stopped sending its normal signal. So someone, or something, had deliberately changed the aircraft's course.
Section 3. The ghost flight. So, with all standard communications totally lost, a massive breakthrough clue emerged from a British satellite company called Inmarsat. It turns out the aircraft's satellite communication system had actually continued to send out these automatic electronic pings, basically what we call satellite handshakes. Now, while these couldn't give us exact GPS coordinates, their timing allowed investigators to calculate distance. And this revealed the astounding fact that the plane actually kept flying for a staggering 7 hours after it went off the radar.
7 extra hours of flight time basically meant two massive possibilities. It either took a northern arc extending over heavily populated landmasses or a southern arc. While the evidence ultimately ruled out the north, the data pointed investigators straight down a path they call the 7th arc, deep into the remote southern Indian Ocean. We're talking about some of the deepest, roughest, and just most unforgiving waters on planet Earth.
That brings us to Section 4, the massive ocean search. Knowing the general area based on those satellite arcs honestly created a logistical nightmare. It launched an international effort unlike anything we've ever seen before. A global fleet of ships, aircraft, and sonar tech all joined forces. And just to give you a sense of the sheer scale we're talking about here, search teams scoured a mind-boggling 120,000 square kilometers of the ocean floor. To put that into perspective, that is an underwater search area larger than a lot of actual countries. And they did all of this while battling dangerous weather, massive swells, and these extreme crushing depths.
But here's the really heartbreaking part. Despite this unprecedented, multi-year search, the main wreckage was never found. And no wreckage means no black boxes. Without those black boxes, we are entirely blind to what was said in those final conversations inside the cockpit, and we're missing the specific flight data that is absolutely necessary to understand exactly what happened in those last moments.
All right, Section 5. Clues wash ashore.
Just as the public was starting to wonder if the plane had literally vanished into another dimension, more than a year after the initial disappearance, a major breakthrough happened. A piece of debris washed up on a beach on Reunion Island, which is thousands of miles away from the primary search zone. Experts carefully examined this specific wing part, called a flaperon, and they definitively linked it to Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. This was a huge deal. It was the very first undeniable physical proof that the aircraft had, in fact, crashed into the Indian Ocean. And over time, a few more confirmed pieces started washing up on distant coastlines.
Scientists immediately went to work studying this incredible journey across the ocean. They basically tried to reverse engineer the drift, analyzing the winds, the ocean currents, and the buoyancy of the floating objects. The hope was to calculate backwards from where the debris landed to figure out exactly where the crash might have occurred. But unfortunately, while this did help narrow down some areas, the ocean is just too chaotic. The calculations simply weren't precise enough to pinpoint the main wreckage on the ocean floor. It's like the ocean returned tiny pieces of the story, but it kept the actual ending completely hidden.
Section 6. An unsolved aviation mystery.
Because the ocean kept the main wreckage so securely hidden in its depths, it left behind this massive void of definitive facts. And, well, you know how it goes. Nature abhors a vacuum. The official investigation rigorously examined every single possibility to fill that void. They looked at technical failures that could have knocked out communications, maybe a catastrophic fire, a hijacking, or even deliberate human action by someone on board. Yet after all that, they found absolutely no single explanation that perfectly answered every question.
Now, if you spend any time online at all, you are going to find countless theories about this flight, and some of them have become extremely popular. But we really have to remember a critical baseline here. Popularity is not evidence. The official investigation did note that the deliberate course change is incredibly hard to explain away as just a simple accident, but until the physical aircraft is actually recovered, these popular ideas are going to remain exactly that, just theories.
And this right here is exactly why this case is so incredibly unique and just so deeply frustrating. Think about typical aviation disasters. Investigators recover the wreckage, they analyze the flight recorders, and they piece together the exact sequence of events. But with MH370, we are operating completely blind. The final, most important piece of the puzzle is still lying completely undiscovered out there in the dark. But hey, this story doesn't just end with a closed case file. More than a decade later, the drive to solve this mystery hasn't stopped for a second. The search is actually continuing in new forms. We've got advanced underwater robots now that can map the ocean floor way more efficiently than the tech they had back in 2014. Researchers are still constantly reanalyzing that initial satellite data, studying the ocean currents, and poring over the recovered debris. The aviation industry is absolutely determined to find answers for the families of those 239 people and to make sure that a modern aircraft can never, ever just vanish like this again.
The disappearance of MH370 completely changed aviation forever. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. In a highly connected world where your smartphone practically tracks your every single step, how on earth is it possible that a massive machine carrying hundreds of lives could slip entirely through the cracks? Drop your thoughts in the comments below on what you think actually happened out there in the dark, and be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into history's most fascinating true mysteries.